The first fence alarm tripped at 3:17 in the morning. Evelyn Cross opened her eyes before the second chime sounded. She did not move fast. She did not panic. She simply lay still in the dark cabin, listening to the mountain breathe around her. Wind moved through the pines. Rainwater slid from the roof in slow drops. Somewhere far below, a creek dragged itself over stone. Then the monitor beside her bed blinked red. North Ridge. Outer fence. Sector 4. Evelyn sat up. On the screen, 3 pale shapes moved through the trees, hunched under heavy jackets, their headlamps cutting narrow white scars through the fog. One of them held bolt cutters. Another carried a rifle across his chest like he wanted the forest to notice. The third man stopped at the warning sign and laughed. Private land.no trespassing.wildlife protection area. Violators will be prosecuted. He lifted 2 fingers in mock salute toward the camera, though he clearly had no idea where it was. Evelyn watched him for 3 seconds. Then she reached over, turned off the bedside lamp, and the cabin disappeared into darkness. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in courage and respect, hit like and subscribe. These stories inspire change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Evelyn. 6 months earlier, nobody in Clearwater County had known what to make of the woman who bought Black Pine Mountain. The property had sat unwanted for years, 3,700 acres of steep timber, old logging roads, frozen streams, abandoned cabins, and ridgelines sharp enough to break a man's pride before they broke his legs. Locals called it cursed land. Hunters called it wasted land. Developers called it impossible. Evelyn Cross called it quiet. She signed the papers on a Tuesday morning at the county office, wearing a gray jacket, faded jeans, and boots that had already seen more miles than most trucks in town. Her dark hair was pulled back low at the neck. Her face was calm, weathered slightly by sun and wind, with the kind of stillness people mistook for weakness when they did not know better. The clerk looked at the documents, then at her. You buying this alone? Evelyn nodded. That mountain's not exactly friendly. No mountain is, she said. The clerk waited for more. Evelyn gave her nothing. That became the first story. By Friday, the whole town had heard about the quiet woman from out of state who had bought Black Pine Mountain with cash and moved into the old ranger cabin near the west slope. Some said she was a widow. Some said she was hiding from a bad marriage. One man at the diner claimed she was probably writing a nature book. None of them guessed the truth. Evelyn had spent 16 years in uniform. The last 9 had been inside places that never made the evening news, lying behind rocks in desert heat, breathing through pain, watching valleys through glass, waiting for decisions that had to be made without anger and without hesitation. She had been a Navy SEAL sniper. But on Black Pine Mountain, she was just the woman who fixed her own fences. Every morning before sunrise, she walked the property line with an old black shepherd named Ranger. She checked trail cameras, cleared fallen branches, repaired wire, and marked fresh tracks in a small waterproof notebook she kept in her jacket pocket. Deer, elk, coyote, bear, and sometimes men. The first illegal trap appeared near the East Creek 3 weeks after she moved in. Steel jaws hidden under leaves. Bait tied with fishing line. Crude, careless, cruel. Evelyn knelt beside it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Ranger sniffed once, then backed away. Yeah, she whispered. I see it too. She disabled the trap, photographed it, tagged the location, and carried it back to her cabin. By sunset, she had installed 2 more cameras along the creek bed. By the end of the month, she had found 3 more traps, 2 shell casings, and tire tracks near a locked service gate. Someone had been using Black Pine long before she bought it. And they did not plan to stop. The first confrontation happened at Miller's Gas and Feed on a cold Saturday afternoon. Evelyn was loading fencing staples and salt blocks into the bed of her truck when a lifted pickup rolled in beside her. 3 men climbed out, all broad shoulders, muddy boots, and the kind of confidence that came from never being challenged in front of witnesses. The tallest one, Wade Harlan, leaned against the pump and smiled like he owned the county. You're the lady who bought Black Pine. Evelyn kept loading. That's private land now, she said. Wade laughed. It was private land before. Didn't stop anybody. His friends chuckled behind him. Evelyn placed the last salt block into the truck bed and closed the tailgate. Wade stepped closer. You really think some signs and a little fence are gonna keep people out of those woods? Evelyn looked at him then. Not sharply. Not dramatically. Just long enough for the smile on his face to weaken. The mountain remembers footprints, she said. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Wade laughed again, louder this time, but there was something forced in it. Well, he said, backing toward his truck, guess we'll see. Evelyn watched them drive away. She did not call after them. She did not threaten them. She simply noted the license plate, the tires, the missing left mud flap, and the fresh scratch along the passenger door. Old habits did not retire. They only got quieter. Part 2. By the time winter settled over Blackpine Mountain, Evelyn knew every sound the land could make. She knew the difference between a branch snapping under snow and a hoof striking frozen ground. She knew when the wind was moving naturally through the pines and when something was pushing through them against the grain. She knew which ravens called at dawn and which ones went silent when strangers climbed too high. Most people looked at a mountain and saw trees. Evelyn saw patterns. On the south slope, elk moved in a loose crescent before storms. Near the creek, deer crossed just after first light, never twice in the same place if wolves had passed through. Along the old logging road, boot prints told stories better than men did. Weight, speed, direction, fear, and lately, arrogance. The tracks near the service gate belonged to the same 3 men from Miller's Gas and Feed. Evelyn could tell before she ever saw their faces again. One dragged his left heel. One walked wide, favoring an old knee. One stepped heavy, careless, crushing. Fern and moss beneath him like the mountain owed him permission. Wade Harlan. Evelyn learned his name from the sheriff's office, though the deputy behind the desk did not seem eager to help. Wade's been hunting these hills since he was a kid, the deputy said, leaning back in his chair. Probably just crossed the line by mistake. Evelyn placed 3 printed photos on the counter. Boot tracks. A broken lock. A dead doe left in the brush with only the antlers removed. The deputy's expression changed slightly, but not enough. Hard to prove who did what out there. Evelyn nodded once. That's why I brought proof. She slid a 4th photo forward. A blurry image from a trail camera showed Wade's truck near the locked gate at 2:11 in the morning. The missing left mud flap was visible. So was the scratch along the passenger door. The deputy stared at it. For the first time, he sat forward. I'll talk to him. Evelyn gathered the photos. No, she said quietly. You'll document it. The room went still. The deputy looked up, surprised by the tone. Not loud. Not rude. Just final. Evelyn had heard men speak like that in command tents before airstrikes, in hospital corridors before bad news, in briefing rooms where hesitation could cost lives. She knew the weight of a sentence that left no room for games. The deputy cleared his throat. Yes, ma'am. Word spread quickly after that. At the diner, Wade made sure everyone heard his version. She thinks she owns the whole mountain now, he said, stabbing a fork into his eggs. Comes in here acting like some kind of federal agent. His younger cousin, Travis, laughed. Maybe she watched too many survival shows. The 3rd man, Clint Mercer, said nothing at first. He was older than the other 2, with a hard face and small eyes that kept moving toward the window. She got cameras, Clint muttered. Wade smirked. Then we wear masks. Travis grinned, but Clint did not. She ain't scared of you. That made Wade stop chewing. Around them, the diner got quiet in that careful small-town way, where nobody wanted trouble, but everybody wanted to hear it. Wade leaned back. She will be. 2 booths away, Evelyn paid for her coffee. She had been there the whole time. Part 3. Evelyn did not look over when Wade said it. She stirred her coffee once, left $1 beneath the cup, and stood. The diner's old floorboards creaked under her boots as she walked toward the door. Every conversation in the room bent around her silence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. The waitress stopped wiping the counter. Even the radio above the pie case seemed suddenly too loud. Wade turned in his booth, smiling like he had been waiting for this. "Well, look at that," he said. "Mountain Lady heard us." Evelyn stopped beside his table. For the first time that morning, she looked directly at him. Wade was big in the way men become big when no one has ever forced them to be careful. Thick neck. Rough hands. A face weathered by cold mornings and bad decisions. He wore a camo jacket with a hunting knife clipped openly to his belt, more for display than need. Travis sat beside him, still grinning. Clint looked down at his plate. Evelyn's voice stayed even. "You left a doe to rot on the North Draw." Wade's smile thinned. "Don't know what you're talking about. You cut the lock on gate 6. No proof of that. You crossed my fence 3 times in 11 days. Wade leaned back, spreading his arms. "Your fence runs through land my family hunted before you even knew this county existed." Evelyn held his gaze. "Your family never owned it." The words landed cleanly. Someone near the counter coughed into the silence. Wade's jaw shifted. "You should be careful talking like that." Evelyn did not move. She did not raise her chin or step closer. Her hands stayed relaxed at her sides, the left thumb resting lightly against the seam of her jacket. "You should be careful walking onto land where you don't know the terrain." Travis laughed, but it came out thin. "Is that supposed to scare us?" Evelyn turned her eyes to him. "No, one word. Flat. Calm. Final." Then she looked back at Wade. "It's supposed to inform you." She walked out before he could answer. The bell above the diner door gave a small, bright ring. Cold air swept in, then vanished behind her. Inside, nobody spoke for several seconds. Wade watched through the window as Evelyn crossed the gravel lot toward her truck. She moved without hurry, like the whole town was just weather passing through. That bothered him more than anger would have. Anger he understood. Fear he enjoyed. But Evelyn Cross gave him nothing to hold. Travis leaned across the table. "You gonna let her talk to you like that?" Wade did not answer. Clint finally looked up. "I'm telling you," he said quietly, "something's wrong with that woman." Wade turned on him. "What, you scared of her now?" Clint's eyes stayed on the window. "I'm saying she ain't normal." Outside, Evelyn opened her truck door, paused, and glanced once toward the diner. Not at Wade. At the reflection above him. The small dome camera mounted near the ceiling had caught the entire conversation. She had seen it when she walked in. She had chosen that table on purpose. By noon, Evelyn was back on Black Pine Mountain. Clouds had rolled low over the ridgeline, pressing gray light into the trees. The whole place smelled of wet bark, iron soil, and coming snow. Ranger trotted ahead of her along the trail, black ears shifting at every sound. Evelyn moved slower than the dog, but not because she was tired. She was reading. A bent grass stem near the old logging road. A smear of mud on a rock where no animal would step. A cigarette filter tucked under cedar needles. 3 men had stood there recently, looking down toward her cabin. Planning. She crouched beside the cigarette and studied the print beside it. Deep heel. Wide stance. Wade. Evelyn took a photo, marked the coordinate, and dropped a small orange flag into the soil. Then she followed the tracks higher, past the deadfall, through a narrow seam in the trees where the mountain folded inward and swallowed sound. That was where she found the second sign. A piece of bark had been cut from a pine trunk. Not by an animal. Not by weather. By a knife. 3 short marks carved into the wood. A trail marker. Evelyn stared at it for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a strip of red tape, and tied it to a branch 6 feet away. Not to warn them. To remind herself. By sunset, she had mapped 6 unauthorized entry points, 2 likely approach routes, and 1 hidden campsite tucked beneath a shelf of rock above the North Creek. There were beer cans there, boot prints, a rusted food tin, and an old brass casing half buried in mud. Evelyn stood in the center of it all as dusk folded over the mountain. Most landowners would have called the sheriff again. Most would have posted more signs. Most would have bought brighter locks. Evelyn did all 3. Then she did what men like Wade never expected. She prepared the mountain. Part 4 preparation for Evelyn Cross had never meant aggression. It meant discipline. It meant knowing where the creek flooded after 2 days of rain. It meant knowing which ridge carried sound the farthest and which hollow swallowed it whole. It meant knowing that frightened men usually ran downhill, arrogant men usually pushed forward, and desperate men almost always chose the easiest path, even when that path was exactly where someone wanted them to go. She spent the next week turning Black Pine Mountain into a witness. Not a battlefield. A witness. She mounted trail cameras high enough that nobody would notice them unless they knew how to look up. She placed motion lights near the old logging road, not to blind anyone, but to catch faces, license plates, and movement. She added GPS tags to the gates. She reinforced the fence line with fresh wire and marked every repair with date-stamped photos. At the cabin table each night, she built a file. Photos. Coordinates. Times. Vehicle descriptions. Footwear impressions. Notes on trap placement. Notes on carcass locations. Notes on where the men paused to smoke, where they stood to glass the valley, where they crossed water to hide their tracks and failed anyway. Ranger slept beside the stove while Evelyn wrote. Outside, snow began to collect on the porch rail. Inside, the map of Black Pine Mountain grew crowded with red pins. One pin for every lie Wade Harlan would eventually tell. On the 8th morning, Sheriff Daniel Reese drove up the West Road in a Brown County cruiser with mud frozen along the wheel wells. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, quiet-eyed, with the tired patience of someone who had spent too many years separating truth from noise. Evelyn met him at the gate. He looked at the new camera mounted above the post, then at the repaired lock. "You've been busy." "So have they." Reese followed her to the cabin without small talk. Ranger watched him from the porch, ears forward, then gave one low breath and stepped aside. The sheriff noticed. "Good dog. Good judge of character," Evelyn said. Inside, she laid the file across the table. Reese took his hat off before he sat down. For 20 minutes, he said almost nothing. He studied the photographs. The boot prints. The truck image from Gate 6. The broken lock. The trap locations. The footage still showing masked men dragging something beneath the trees. His jaw tightened once when he saw the dough left in the draw. "Wade Harlan," he said finally. Evelyn did not answer. She did not need to. Reese leaned back in the chair and rubbed a hand over his mouth. "His family's been trouble around here for a long time." "That isn't a charge." "No," Reese said. "It's a warning." Evelyn's eyes remained steady. "To me or to him?" The sheriff looked at her then, really looked. Most people saw the simple things first. The calm voice. The worn jacket. The lean frame. The woman living alone on too much land. Reese saw something else. He saw how she sat with her back to the wall. How her eyes checked the window whenever wind moved against the glass. How every document on the table was arranged not emotionally, but tactically. How her hands never fidgeted. "You military?" he asked. "Was." "What branch?" "Navy." He waited. Evelyn did not fill the silence. Reese gave a small nod, accepting the boundary. "Game warden's already interested," he said. "With this, we can move. But I need you to be smart. Don't confront them alone." Evelyn looked toward the window. Snow slid from a pine branch in a soft white sheet. "I don't plan to confront them." The sheriff studied her face. "That answer doesn't comfort me." It shouldn't. That night, Wade Harlan sat in his garage with Travis and Clint, drinking beer beneath a hanging work light. A hunting map was spread across the hood of an old truck. Black Pine Mountain rose across it in contour lines and shaded timber. Wade had drawn a route in black marker from the north access road to the high meadow near Evelyn's cabin. Travis tapped the map. "She got cameras here, and probably near the creek." Wade smiled. "Then we don't use the creek." Clint stood back from the truck, arms crossed. "This is stupid." Wade looked up slowly. "You got something to say?" "I've been saying it." "She's building a case." "That's what people like her do." "People like her?" Travis asked. Clint's face tightened. "I saw her hands." Wade laughed. "You saw her hands?" "Yeah," Clint said. "No rings. No polish. Old scars across the knuckles. Burn mark near the wrist. She don't move like a rancher." Wade took a drink. "So what is she, Clint?" Clint hesitated. "I don't know." That was the part that bothered him. He had met dangerous men before. Loud ones. Violent ones. Men who needed everyone to know what they were capable of. Evelyn Cross was different. She did not perform danger. She carried it quietly, like something folded and put away. Wade tossed the empty beer can into a corner. I'm tired of everyone acting like she's some kind of ghost story. He leaned over the map and tapped the high meadow. There's a big herd moving through here before dawn. We go in, take what we came for, and leave before she knows we crossed. Clint stared at the black line on the map. Then he saw where it ended. That's too close to her cabin. Wade smiled. That's the point. Far above town, under a roof of snow and pine, Evelyn stood in the dark beside her kitchen window. Her radio scanner murmured softly on the counter. The mountain was quiet. Too quiet. Ranger stood beside her, staring toward the north ridge. Evelyn reached down and rested 2 fingers on the dog's head. I know, she whispered. Then, miles away, a fence alarm blinked red. Sector 4. 3:17 a.m. Part 5. The red light blinked once. Then again. Evelyn watched it without breathing. Sector 4 was not the easiest place to enter Black Pine Mountain. That was the first thing that mattered. The easiest breach point was Gate 6, where the old logging road dipped low and the fence line crossed soft ground. A careless man would have gone there. Wade had chosen the North Ridge instead. That meant he was not just trespassing. He was trying to prove something. Evelyn reached for the radio on the counter and pressed the transmit button. Sheriff Reese, she said, her voice low. This is Cross. I have movement on the North Ridge. Sector 4. 3 subjects. Static cracked once. Then Reese answered, awake but rough with sleep. Are you secure? For now. Do not engage. I don't plan to. A pause. Evelyn. She looked at the monitor. 3 figures were moving through the trees. I heard you, she said. She ended the transmission, pulled on her jacket, and opened the steel cabinet beside the stove. Inside were no trophies. No dramatic wall of weapons. No shrine to the woman she had been. Just a sidearm locked in a safe box, a flashlight, a first aid kit, a thermal monocular, spare batteries, and a small black notebook with waterproof pages. She took the flashlight. She took the radio. She took the monocular. The sidearm stayed locked away. Ranger stood at the door, silent and ready. Stay, Evelyn said. The dog's ears dipped, but he obeyed. Outside, the mountain was a wall of cold. Snow had stopped falling, but the storm had left the world muted and pale. The trees stood heavy under white weight. The air held that deep winter silence that made every distant sound feel close. Evelyn moved from the cabin without turning on the porch light. She knew every step between the west slope and the north ridge. She knew where the ground dipped beneath the snow, where roots twisted under the trail, where old logging ruts could catch a careless boot. She moved with the slow patience of someone who had learned long ago that speed was not the same thing as control. Half a mile above her, Wade Harlan cut through the trees with Travis behind him and Clint farther back. All 3 wore dark jackets. All 3 carried packs. Wade had a rifle slung over his shoulder and a grin hidden beneath a black face covering. See, he whispered. Nothing. Travis laughed quietly. She's probably asleep. Clint did not answer. His eyes kept moving. The forest felt wrong. Not haunted. Not magical. Nothing like that. Just too arranged. Too aware. He had hunted enough backcountry to know when land felt untouched and when someone had studied it harder than he had. Every 20 yards, he saw something that bothered him. A branch trimmed too cleanly. A strip of bark missing at eye level. A stone moved from where frost should have locked it in place. He looked back toward the fence. The cut wire had already vanished into fog. We should turn around, Clint said. Wade stopped and turned slowly. You say that one more time, you can wait in the truck. Clint's jaw tightened. There's no truck close enough if this goes bad. Travis looked between them. Would you relax? It's one woman and a dog. Wade leaned close to Clint. That's right. One woman. One dog. And a mountain everyone's been scared of since before you were born. He tapped Clint's chest with 2 fingers. Tonight, we remind her who these woods belong to. 30 yards downhill, Hidden behind a black pine, Evelyn watched their heat signatures through the monocular. 3 white shapes. One confident. One nervous. One pretending not to be. She lowered the device and listened. Voices carried strangely in cold air. Wade's whisper moved down the slope, broken by branches, but clear enough. 1 woman and a dog. Evelyn almost smiled. Almost. She turned and moved west, not toward them, but around them. That was the difference. Angry people chased. Trained people shaped the room. And the mountain was the room. The first motion light triggered when Wade reached the narrow cut between 2 boulders. White light snapped on from above. Travis cursed and stumbled backward. Camera. Wade lifted an arm to shield his eyes. Keep moving. Another light came on behind them. Then another. For a moment, the 3 men stood frozen in the snow, lit from 3 angles, their shadows thrown long and broken across the trees. Clint turned in a slow circle. She knew. Wade's face hardened. Shoot the lights. No, Clint snapped. Wade looked at him. You giving orders now? You fire a shot. Sheriff hears it from the valley. Travis swallowed. Maybe we just go. Wade grabbed the front of his jacket. We came this far. Then the speaker mounted high in the trees clicked. On. Evelyn's voice moved through the pines, calm and close. You crossed a marked boundary. Your faces, vehicle, and entry point have been recorded. Leave by the north fence now, and this stays simple. Travis went pale. Clint closed his eyes for half a second. Wade stared into the lights, breathing hard. He could not see her. That was what turned his anger into something uglier. You hear me? He shouted into the trees. You don't own fear, lady. The forest gave him nothing back. No footsteps. No flashlight beam. No warning shot. Only the quiet voice again. I don't need fear. A soft beep sounded somewhere behind them. Then the path they had used to enter lit up in red. Small markers along the snow began blinking one by one, tracing their own footprints back toward the fence. Evelyn had not trapped them inside. She had shown them the exit. And that insulted Wade more than any threat could have. He turned away from the blinking trail and pointed uphill. We keep going. Travis stared at him. She just told us she recorded everything. Then let's give her something to record. Clint grabbed his arm. Wade. Think. Wade shoved him off. I am thinking. No, Clint realized. He wasn't. Wade was bleeding pride now, and pride made men stupid in the dark. Above them, hidden beyond the tree line, Evelyn watched him choose the wrong path. She lifted the radio. Reese, she whispered. They ignored the exit. The sheriff's voice came back tighter now. Where are they heading? Evelyn looked uphill, toward the old north meadow, where the snow hid a steep washout behind a clean white shelf. Exactly where I thought they would. Part 6. The north meadow looked harmless in daylight. That was why Evelyn had chosen it. In summer, grass grew waist-high across the clearing, bending in the wind like water. Elk moved through it at dusk. Wildflowers pushed through the rocky soil near the ridge. From the lower trail, it looked open and easy, a clean path toward the high saddle above her cabin. But winter changed the shape of everything. Snow filled the washout that cut across the meadow, smoothing the broken ground into one white sheet. Beneath that sheet was a drop of nearly 8 feet, not deep enough to kill a careful man, but more than enough to stop a careless one. Especially in the dark. Especially when pride was walking faster than judgment. Evelyn had marked it weeks ago with 2 small reflectors on opposite trees. Not for strangers. For herself. Wade reached the edge of the meadow first. He stepped out from the timber, breathing hard, his anger making steam in the cold air. Travis followed close behind, glancing back every few seconds. Clint came last, slower than both of them, his eyes moving across the snow. He saw the clearing. Then he saw the trees. 2 faint reflectors. One left. One right. Too even to be natural. Stop, Clint whispered. Wade ignored him. Wade. This time, something in Clint's voice made Travis freeze. Wade turned, annoyed. What now? Clint pointed toward the snowfield. Something's wrong. Wade laughed once, sharp and bitter. Everything's wrong with you tonight. Then he took one step into the meadow. The snow held. He took another. Still held. Travis exhaled. See? Wade spread his arms slightly and looked toward the darkness beyond the clearing. That all you got? He shouted. Lights and little warning signs? Evelyn heard him from the tree line west of the meadow. She was 40 yards away, low behind a fallen pine, thermal monocular resting against her eye. She watched Wade's heat signature move closer to the hidden break. His right foot was 2 steps from the lip. She did not move. She did not warn him again. He had been warned at the fence. Warned by the signs. Warned by the lights. Warned by the voice in the trees. Warned by the blinking path home. At some point, a man had to meet the shape of his own choices. Wade took the next step. The crust beneath him cracked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a dry, hollow sound. Then the white ground disappeared under his boots. Wade dropped straight down, arms snapping outward, rifle strap catching across his shoulder as snow collapsed around him. He hit the bottom of the washout with a hard grunt that echoed through the meadow. Travis yelled his name and lunged forward. Clint grabbed him by the back of his jacket and yanked him down. Don't move. Travis fell to one knee. What are you doing? Saving you from being stupid. Below them, Wade cursed in pain. His voice rose from the dark cut in the snow. My leg. Clint's face went tight. Not fear now. Recognition. This was not a trap built to hurt them. It was terrain they had been too arrogant to respect. A speaker clicked somewhere near the far tree line. Evelyn's voice came through, steady as cold iron. Stay where you are. Emergency services are on the way. Do not attempt to cross the meadow. Travis turned in a full circle, panic starting to break through him. Where are you? No answer. Only wind. Clint stared toward the trees. She called help before he fell. The sentence landed harder than the drop. Wade groaned below them, trying to shift. Get me out. Clint crawled forward on his stomach, spreading his weight carefully. He shined his light into the washout and saw Wade lying twisted in snow and frozen mud, one boot pinned under a fallen branch half buried beneath the drift. The rifle lay beside him, half covered. Don't touch the rifle, Clint said. Wade looked up, furious even through pain. Get me out. I said don't touch it. For the first time all night, Wade listened. Minutes stretched. The cold deepened. Travis stood shaking near the tree line, his earlier grin gone completely. He kept looking toward the route they had refused to take, the red markers still blinking faintly downhill through the trees. That way out had been simple. This way had become evidence. Then the mountain changed again. Blue lights flickered far below the ridge. Not one vehicle. Several. Sheriff Reese had brought deputies. The game warden. County rescue. Every light moved up the access road like a slow verdict. Wade saw them from the bottom of the washout and went silent. Clint sat back in the snow, breathing through his nose. Travis whispered, "We're done." The speaker clicked one final time. You crossed the fence, Evelyn said. You ignored the exit. Now keep your hands visible and wait. There was no anger in her voice. That made it worse. A few minutes later, Sheriff Reese's voice cut through the trees. Wade Harlan. Travis Pike. Clint Mercer. This is Sheriff Reese. Stay where you are and keep your hands where we can see them. Travis raised both hands before anyone reached him. Clint did the same. Wade tried to sit up in the washout and failed. Deputies moved with rescue personnel toward the clearing. The game warden photographed the fence cuts, the packs, the rifle, the hidden snares, the fresh tracks, and the bloodless carcass tag Wade had illegally carried in his jacket pocket. Everything was recorded. Everything was documented. And still, nobody saw Evelyn. Not at first. She stayed in the tree line, watching the scene unfold through branches silvered with snow. Her face revealed nothing. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was slow. This was not victory to her. Victory belonged to people who wanted applause. This was containment. This was the end of a threat before it became something worse. Sheriff Reese finally spotted her near the fallen pine. He walked over alone, boots crunching in the snow. You all right? He asked. Evelyn lowered the monocular. Yes. He looked toward Wade, then back at her. You knew he'd go that way. I knew he'd avoid being told what to do. Reese gave a tired sigh. That kind of man usually does. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Below them, Wade's voice rose as deputies secured the area. She set us up. Reese looked toward the sound. Then he looked at Evelyn's calm face, the camera mounted high in the tree behind her, the posted signs along the fence, the clear exit markers still blinking red through the woods. No, the sheriff said quietly. He walked himself in. Evelyn said nothing. She only turned her eyes back toward the meadow. Snow kept falling, soft and indifferent, covering the footprints one flake at a time. Part 7 by sunrise, Black Pine Mountain no longer felt like a secret. Tire tracks scarred the access road. Blue lights washed against the snow. Deputy radios cracked through the trees, turning the quiet ridge into a place of statements, photographs, and numbered evidence markers. Wade Harlan was lifted out of the washout by county rescue just after first light. He was conscious, furious, and loud enough for everyone to hear. She planned this, he snapped his two. Paramedics secured his leg. That woman set traps on her land. She tried to kill us. Evelyn stood 30 yards away beside Sheriff Reese's cruiser, holding a paper cup of coffee she had not touched. Her face did not change. Sheriff Reese looked at Wade, then at the meadow, then at the bright orange warning stake half buried near the trees. Wade, he said, you fell into a natural washout. She covered it. Snow covered it. She knew it was there. So did the mountain. A deputy nearby lowered his head to hide a smile. Wade saw it and grew red in the face. You think this is funny? No, Reese said. I think it's documented. That word did what anger could not. It quieted Wade. The game warden, Marla Keene, walked over carrying 3 sealed evidence bags. She was a small woman with silver hair tucked under a wool cap, but everyone in the county knew better than to mistake her size for softness. She held up one bag. Illegal snares. Then another. Unreported kill tags. Then the third. Fence cutters. Wade looked away. Travis stood near a deputy's truck with a blanket around his shoulders. His hands shook from cold and fear. Clint sat on a fallen log, silent, staring at the ground as if the snow might open again beneath him. Marla turned toward Evelyn. You have footage? Evelyn nodded. Cabin server. Cloud backup. Time stamped. Wade laughed bitterly from the stretcher. Of course she does. Evelyn finally looked at him. Not with hatred. Not even satisfaction. Just attention. That was worse. Wade had wanted fear. He had wanted a fight. He had wanted the woman on the mountain to shout, threaten, and prove him right in front of witnesses. Instead, she had given him records. Dates. Coordinates. Warnings. Exits. Choices. And every choice he made had led him here. You don't get it, do you? Wade said, his voice lower now. People around here don't like outsiders coming in and telling us what to do. Evelyn set the coffee on the hood of the cruiser. I didn't tell you what to do. Wade glared. You posted signs everywhere. That was the law speaking. You put cameras up. That was evidence speaking. You used that mountain against us. Evelyn stepped closer, stopping just beyond the reach of the paramedics. No, she said. You walked onto land you didn't own, cut a fence you didn't build, carried weapons into a protected area, ignored a recorded warning, ignored a marked exit, and then crossed terrain you hadn't bothered to understand. The ridge went quiet. Even the deputies stopped moving for a moment. Evelyn's voice stayed calm. The mountain didn't turn against you, Mr. Harlan. It simply stopped forgiving you. Wade had no answer for that. Sheriff Reese watched him try to find one. He did not. The paramedics loaded Wade into the rescue vehicle. Travis and Clint were placed in separate cruisers. The evidence was bagged, labeled, and carried down the mountain. But before the sheriff left, Marla Keene asked to see the cabin server. Evelyn led her and Reese down the west trail toward the cabin. The walk took 12 minutes. Neither officer spoke much. They passed 3 cameras they would never have noticed if Evelyn had not pointed them out. One was hidden inside the hollow of a dead pine. One was mounted above a rock shelf, painted the exact color of winter bark. One watched the old logging road from behind a cluster of dried fern. Reese looked at the last one and shook his head. You weren't kidding about preparation. Evelyn kept walking. Preparation keeps people alive. Marla glanced at her. You learned that in the Navy? Evelyn did not answer right away. The cabin appeared through the trees, small and dark against the snow, smoke rising from the chimney in a thin gray line. Ranger stood on the porch like he had been carved there, watching the officers approach. Evelyn climbed the steps and opened the door. Inside, the cabin was warmer than it looked. Clean. Simple. No clutter. A cast-iron stove glowed softly in the corner. Maps covered one wall, but they were not decorative. They were layered with transparent sheets, grease pencil marks, terrain notes, wind channels, trail lines, and numbered sectors. Reese stopped in the doorway. Marla stepped in slower. On a small shelf beside the desk sat a framed photograph. Evelyn in uniform. Younger. Sharper. Standing beside 5 other operators beneath the hard white sun of some country neither officer recognized. Her rifle was slung across her chest. Her eyes were the same. Steady. Marla looked from the photo to Evelyn. You were a sniper. The room held still for half a second. Evelyn moved to the desk and unlocked the server cabinet. Reese's gaze drifted to another frame, half hidden behind a stack of field notebooks. A Navy commendation. Then another. Then a folded flag in a wooden case, not displayed proudly, but placed quietly, like something too heavy to hang on a wall. The sheriff understood then. Not all of it. Enough. Wade had not crossed the fence of a frightened woman. He had crossed into the life of someone who had spent years surviving places designed to break human beings. Someone who knew how to wait. How to watch. How to turn chaos into order without raising her voice. Marla exhaled slowly. Why didn't you tell anyone? Evelyn connected the drive to a laptop. Because I didn't buy the mountain to be remembered. The first video opened. Wade's truck at gate 6. The next showed Travis cutting wire. The next showed Clint placing a snare near the creek. Then came the footage from last night, the breach, the ignored warning, the marked exit, Wade turning uphill, the fall into the washout. Every second was clear. Every warning audible. Every lie already dead. Reese watched in silence. When the final clip ended, he leaned back in the chair. That'll hold. Marla nodded. This won't be a fine and a handshake. Evelyn closed the laptop. Good. Outside, the wind moved through the pines. For the first time that morning, the mountain sounded peaceful again. Reese stood, putting his hat back on. You know Wade's going to talk. Evelyn looked toward the window. Down the slope, the last cruiser disappeared through the trees, leaving 2 clean lines in the snow. Men like Wade always talk. You worried? She watched the road until the cruiser vanished completely. No, Marla studied her face. Why not? Evelyn turned from the window. Because for once, everyone else saw what the mountain already knew. Part 8. The story reached town before the last cruiser reached the pavement. By 9 in the morning, half of Clearwater County had heard that Wade Harlan broke his leg on Black Pine Mountain. By 10, the story had changed. By noon, Wade had been ambushed, hunted, humiliated, trapped, and nearly killed by the strange woman who lived alone in the old ranger cabin. At Miller's Gas and Feed, men leaned against the counter and repeated pieces of the rumor like they had seen it themselves. She rigged the whole meadow. Heard she had military-grade cameras in every tree. Wade says she was watching through a scope. He says she wanted him to fall. The cashier said nothing. She had seen Evelyn buy fence staples and salt blocks. She had seen Wade smile at her like trouble was a birthright. And she had lived in the county long enough to know that loud men usually edited stories until they sounded like victims. At the diner, the waitress who had served Evelyn coffee stood behind the counter and listened to Wade's cousin tell anyone who would stay seated. She thinks she's above everyone, he said. Comes here with money, buys a mountain, starts treating locals like criminals. The waitress set down a pot of coffee. Were they on her land? The cousin blinked. That's not the point. It usually is. The diner got quiet. 2 tables away, an old rancher named Bill Harrow looked up from his toast. I hunted black pine when I was young, he said. Never had to cut a fence to do it. Nobody answered him. By afternoon, Sheriff Reese released a short statement. 3 suspects had been detained following an illegal trespassing and poaching investigation on private conservation land. Evidence had been recovered. Charges were pending. One suspect had sustained a non-life-threatening injury after falling into a natural terrain feature while ignoring posted warnings and recorded instructions to leave. Natural terrain feature. That phrase spread faster than the rumors. People laughed about it in the hardware store. They whispered it at the post office. They repeated it online with little mountain emojis and comments about Wade finally meeting something that did not care who his family was. But Evelyn did not read any of it. She spent the afternoon repairing Sector 4. The cut in the fence was clean and low, done by someone who had expected darkness to protect him. Evelyn removed the damaged wire, stretched a new line between the posts, and hammered staples into frozen wood with slow, controlled strikes. Rangers sat nearby, watching the trees. The forest had changed since the arrest. Not physically. The same pines stood in the same snow. The creek still ran beneath its thin shell of ice. The wind still moved down from the ridge, carrying the smell of stone and cedar. But the pressure was gone. For weeks, Evelyn had felt human arrogance moving under the quiet like a second weather. Boot prints where they did not belong. Cigarette ash and clean soil. Laughter caught on hidden microphones. Men taking from the land because no one had stopped them hard enough. Now there was only winter. And winter, at least, was honest. Evelyn finished the repair just before sunset. She took a photo of the new wire, logged the time in her notebook, and stood for a moment with one gloved hand resting on the fence post. Beyond the line, the mountain dropped into blue shadow. Behind her, Ranger gave one low bark. Evelyn turned. A truck was coming up the west road. Not a sheriff's cruiser. Not a rescue vehicle. An old green pickup with a cracked windshield and a bale of hay tied in the bed. It stopped 20 yards from the gate. Bill Harrow climbed out slowly, joints stiff in the cold. He wore a brown coat patched at both elbows and a hat that looked older than some of the buildings in town. In one hand, he carried a paper sack. Evelyn waited by the fence. Bill walked up, but he did not cross the gate. That mattered. "Ma'am," he said. Evelyn nodded. "Mr. Harrow." He glanced at the repaired wire. "Good work." "Necessary work." Bill gave a faint smile. "Most good work is." He held up the sack. "My wife made bread. Said I should bring it before I lost my nerve." Evelyn looked at the sack, then at him. "That an apology?" Bill took off his hat. "Partly." The wind moved between them. "I was one of the people who figured you wouldn't last up here," he said. "Didn't say it to your face. That don't make it better." Evelyn said nothing. Bill continued. "Black pine makes people arrogant. Always has. Folks think because their granddad crossed a ridge once, the land belongs to them forever." He looked toward the trees. "Truth is, most of us only borrowed it badly." Evelyn's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Bill offered the sack through the bars of the gate. "You protected it better in 6 months than some families did in 60 years. Evelyn accepted the bread. "Thank your wife." "I will." He put his hat back on, then paused. "Sheriff said you served." Evelyn's eyes lifted. "He shouldn't have. He didn't say much." "Still." Bill nodded, understanding the line. "My son served too," he said quietly. "Army. Came back different." Most people said that sentence like a question. Bill said it like a wound. Evelyn's hand tightened slightly around the paper sack. "Many do. He bought land after. Little place east of here. Said he needed somewhere the world couldn't reach him." Evelyn looked past Bill, toward the ridges darkening under the evening sky. Did it help? Bill took longer to answer than she expected. "Some days." That was honest enough to respect. For a moment, the fence between them felt less like a boundary and more like a line both understood. Bill cleared his throat. "Town's talking." "Towns do. Some are saying Wade got what was coming." Evelyn looked back at him. "And you?" Bill's face settled into something grave. "I think he was offered a way out and didn't take it." Evelyn nodded once. "That's all it was." Bill stepped back. "Well," he said, "if you ever need hay for that dog, or someone to pull a stuck post, my number's on the sack." Ranger's ears perked at the mention of dog. Evelyn glanced down at him. "He prefers blankets." Bill smiled. Smart dog. He turned to leave, then stopped beside his truck. One more thing. Evelyn waited. Bill looked at the mountain, then at the fence, then finally at her. Some people demand respect because they're scared nobody will give it freely. His voice lowered. You didn't demand a thing. He climbed into the truck and drove back down the road. Evelyn stood at the gate until the taillights vanished through the trees. Then she looked at the paper sack in her hand. Warm bread. A phone number. A small peace offering from a town that had almost mistaken silence for weakness. She walked back toward the cabin as night settled over Blackpine. Ranger trotted beside her. Behind them, the new wire held firm in the fading light. Part 9. 3 weeks later, the first elk returned to the North Meadow. Evelyn saw them just after dawn, moving through the pale grass where the snow had begun to melt in long silver seams. A cow stepped out first, cautious and thin from winter. Then another. Then a young bull with one broken antler and frost clinging to his shoulders. They crossed the meadow slowly. No gunshot followed. No engine idled beyond the fence. No laughter carried through the trees. Evelyn stood on the porch with both hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, watching the mountain remember how to breathe. Ranger sat beside her, older in the face than he liked to admit, his black fur touched with gray around the muzzle. His ears stayed forward until the last elk vanished into the timber. Then he gave a quiet huff and rested his chin on his paws. Yeah, Evelyn said softly. They're back. The court hearing had been 2 days earlier. Wade Harlan arrived in a brace, leaning on crutches and wearing the same hard look he had carried all his life. Travis Pike stared at the floor. Clint Mercer answered questions in a voice so low the judge had to ask him to repeat himself twice. The evidence did not bend. Video from the fence. Audio from the warnings. Images of the snares. Photos of the illegal tags. Footage of Wade refusing the marked exit and walking toward the meadow. For once, his anger had nowhere useful to go. The judge suspended their hunting licenses, ordered restitution, approved probation terms, and sent the poaching evidence forward for additional wildlife charges. Their rifles were seized. Their truck was impounded pending review. Their names made the county paper in a short article nobody could turn into a heroic story. Wade tried anyway. Outside the courthouse, he looked at Evelyn across the steps and said, "This isn't over." Sheriff Reese stepped between them before anyone else could move. But Evelyn only looked at Wade with the same calm that had unsettled him from the beginning. It was over at the fence, she said. No one laughed. That made it worse for him. Now Black Pine Mountain was quiet again. Not safe. No mountain was ever truly safe. But honest. Clear. Returned to itself. Evelyn spent that morning replacing trail camera batteries along the west slope. She checked the creek bed for new tracks, cleared branches from the old service road, and removed the last of Wade's orange tape from a tree near the meadow. When she reached the washout, she stopped. The hole looked smaller in daylight. Most things did. The snow had melted enough to reveal the broken edge, the exposed roots, the muddy bottom where Wade had fallen. Evelyn studied it for a moment, then drove a proper warning post into the ground beside it. Danger.unstable ground. Stay back. She tightened the sign until it held steady against the wind. Then she took a photo, logged the time, and moved on. At noon, a truck climbed the west road. Evelyn heard it long before it reached the gate. She stood beside the fence with Ranger at her heel as Sheriff Reese stepped out of his cruiser, carrying a folder and a cardboard box. Morning, he said. It's afternoon. He looked up at the pale sun. So it is. He handed her the folder first. Copies of the final report. Thought you'd want them. Evelyn accepted it. Thank you. Then he lifted the box. And this is from Marla. Inside were 3 new trail cameras, 2 rolls of posted signs, and a note written in firm block letters. For the mountain. Evelyn read it once and folded it carefully. Reese leaned against the cruiser. She also said to tell you the Wildlife Office is considering your place for a private conservation partnership. Evelyn looked toward the ridgeline. That comes with meetings? Probably. Then I'll consider refusing. Reese smiled. Figured you might. For a while, they stood in companionable silence, watching clouds drag their shadows across the trees. Then Reese said, "Town's different about you now." Evelyn did not answer. "Not all of them," he added. "Some people would rather choke than admit they were wrong. But enough." Enough for what? For people to knock. Before crossing a gate. That almost made her smile. Almost. Reese opened the cruiser door, then paused. "You know, there are easier places to live." Evelyn looked at the mountain. The black pines. The hard ridges. The creek flashing between stones. The meadow where elk had returned. The fence line holding clean against the slope. "I didn't need easy." Reese nodded as if he understood. Maybe he did. After he left, Evelyn carried the box back to the cabin. She placed the new cameras beside her maps, set the report in the file drawer, and stood for a moment in the stillness of the room. The photograph from her Navy years sat on the shelf beside the folded flag. For months, she had kept it half hidden behind notebooks. Now she moved it forward. Not much. Just enough that the light could touch the frame. She was not trying to become that woman again. She had never really stopped being her. The uniform was gone. The missions were over. The call signs, the briefings, the long nights behind glass and stone, all of it belonged to another chapter. But discipline remained. So did patience. So did the part of her that understood a truth most loud people never learned. Power did not need to announce itself. By evening, the temperature dropped again. Evelyn walked the north fence with Ranger as sunset burned copper behind the ridge. The repaired wire stretched straight between the posts. The signs were clean. The trees stood dark and watchful. Near Sector 4, she stopped. There were no fresh boot prints. Only deer tracks crossing the snow. Ranger sniffed the ground, satisfied, then looked up at her. Evelyn rested a gloved hand on the top strand of wire. 6 months ago, people had said she would not last up here. That the mountain was too remote. Too harsh. Too lonely. Too much for one woman. They had been wrong about the mountain. They had been wrong about her. But Evelyn did not need them to say it. Below the ridge, Clearwater County began turning on its lights, one house at a time. Small yellow squares in the distance. Lives continuing. Stories changing. Pride softening where truth had finally pressed hard enough. Evelyn turned back toward the cabin. Behind her, Black Pine Mountain settled into night. Not conquered. Not owned in the way arrogant men believed land could be owned. Protected. Respected. Earned. And somewhere beyond the fence, in the fading cold, a warning sign moved slightly in the wind. Private land.no trespassing. Wildlife protection area. This time, nobody laughed. Because the people of Clearwater County had finally learned what Evelyn Cross had known all along. Respect is not demanded. It is earned.